Hi guys, let's talk about scene 5. So, scene 5 is where we finally get to interact with Tiresias. Tiresias is a blind prophet who follows a little boy around who does his physical seeing for him, while Tiresias does the spiritual seeing, if you will, okay, the prophesizing. Prophetizing? Professing? I don't know what the verb of that is. It doesn't matter. And some of the things that he does, as he describes when he was sitting in his chair of augury, it says that he listens to the birds. He also does animal sacrifices, because you can see when he mentions the melting entrails dissolved in gray smoke, the slime of the fat thigh flesh, the bare bone burst from the welter. So we got some pretty old school stuff going on here. But notice your stage directions too say that the opening speeches of him should be in sing-song contrast to the more realistic lines of Creon. So I always kind of imagine Tiresias coming onto the stage and the first few lines being more like, "This is the way the blind man comes, princes, something kind of like that. I've never seen, unfortunately, I've never seen like a live production of Antigone, but that's always how I imagined it when it said sing-song. Tiresias has come to warn Creon about what Creon is bringing upon himself and the country as well. Or I don't know if it's technically a country, the state, if you will, of Thebes. I suppose you would say city. So he talks about, and right here where it's when Creon says, "I admit my debt to you," this is because Tiresias is somewhat, well, we've seen him before in, if you had, been an observer of these plays and watched the entire Oedipus Rex series, of which you will remember that Antigone is the third. And Tiresias has been in these plays before helping Oedipus to figure out who he really is, which of course inevitably led to Creon being in power. So that's what Creon means when he says, "I admit my debt to you." So Tiresias explains what his prophet work has brought him. And he says to him, "These are no trifles. All men make mistakes, but a good man yields when he knows his course is wrong and repairs the evil. The only crime is pride." So we're really nailing Creon on the head here when we talk. Tiresias is just laying it down, right? Give in to the dead man. Do not fight with a corpse. What glory is it to kill a man who is dead? He's talking, of course, about Polynices and the fact that, here's Tiresias on stage, this Lincoln Theater production, trying to warn Creon about that his pride is getting in the way when refusing to bury Polynices, because the kingdom is turning against him. The kingdom believes in Antigone, that what Antigone did was right, and Creon is on the edge, or on the verge, or on the precipice of losing not only his kingdom, but some of his family members as well, as we saw with his fight with Haman, right? That didn't end very well. Your death, or her death, shall cause another. You remember that? Okay. So Creon, of course, being proud and full of hubris, right? We talked about hubris in our Tragic Hero notes, excessive pride, does not listen. He does not listen. He feels that there is money involved here. He says, if the great eagles of God himself should carry him," meaning Polynices, "stinking bit by bit to heaven, I would not yield." I want you to imagine this for a second, okay? He's saying that even if the gods themselves sent birds to carry the bits of Polynices' body up to earth, up to heaven, which would for sure indicate to us that the gods were on Antigone's side and that Polynices deserved a proper burial. He's saying, even if that happened, I would not yield. That is some stubborn pride right there. Okay? Kind of like in his speech in scene 3, when he says that a ruler must be obeyed in all things, just and unjust. Just admitting that he should be allowed to do things even if they're not justified or justice well, just would be the right word. I was going to say justice based, but that's the same thing as just. Even if they're not right and he admits that they're not right, he should still be obeyed in all things that he does. So we can see that familial stubbornness kicking in right here with Creon. He, of course, believes that it has to do with money. As we've seen with Creon throughout the play, he's a little bit obsessed with all things money and bribery and anarchy. He's concerned about anarchy, which he calls the greatest evil, and he's concerned with people bribing him and taking over his throne and taking away his power. So he, of course, threatens or accuses Tiresias of being in cahoots with somebody for money. And Tiresias is pretty offended by this and tries to give him a chance to redeem himself, but Creon just won't take it, and they end up upsetting each other. So Creon is saying, whatever you do, you will not change my mind. And Creon is trying to, Tiresias is trying to explain to him that, and even right here where he flat out says, not many days and your house will be full of men and women weeping, and curses will be hurled at you from far cities, grieving for sons unburied, left to rot before the walls of Thebes. But he leaves because Creon's not listening to him, right? He doesn't want to waste his time, and he's old. It probably took him a while to get there or whatever. He doesn't want to waste his breath. But right here where the Choragus says, King, his words remain to plague us. I am old too, but I cannot remember that he was ever false. And for some reason, something in Creon's head switches, something in Creon's brain switches, and he realizes that Tiresias has always been right. That's what that means by I cannot remember that he was ever false. He's never really been wrong. And he realizes it's hard to give in, but it's worse to risk everything for stubborn pride. And so all of a sudden he does this 180, and he realizes that he's being too proud and too stubborn, and he changes his mind. And he talks to the Choragus, who is acting as the audience again at this point, like a character, but also expressing the wishes and the feelings of the audience. Go swiftly to cancel the folly of stubborn men. Go and bring, do it yourself. Don't leave it to other people. You must go and free her from her vault and build a tomb for Polynices. So he goes, he runs off, and we'll have to see what happens. Then we have this paean, which is, as it says over to the side, a hymn that is an appeal to the gods for assistance. Remember that these plays were not merely entertainment. They were first and foremost religious teachings at religious festivals. So while there is fun to be had and there is entertainment to be had, these are meant to teach a lesson of religious significance. So throwing a hymn in there to ask the gods for their assistance makes perfect sense. This particular one is praising Dionysus, which is where, the festivals that these were held in were in respect to Dionysus. And it says that it calls on him to come to Thebes to show mercy and drive out the evil. Okay, so tune in next time for the Exodus, and then we'll be done.